And go ahead, Roger.
All right. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Roger Burke. I'm a senior associate director of admissions here and currently serving in the role as interim director as we go through the process of finding a new director. My responsibilities within the office include a domestic region, which is the central part of Virginia. I work with our ROTC, both Air Force and Army programs. The athletics liaison within the Office of Admissions. I work with our international student population as well as the English language program that we offer on campus. I'm part of the residency committee of the appeals process. A lot of the specialized student populations, I work with those. Um, yeah, so a little bit of everything. I think I got my hands in a lot of stuff. So um, glad that you're here, and hopefully we'll be able to share some information that will make your work a little bit easier. Melinda, you want to take a moment to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all again. My name is Melinda Wood, and I currently serve as the Vice President for Access and Enrollment here at JMU. I was most recently in the role of Director of Admissions. And so, as Roger mentioned, we're in the final stages of concluding that search with hopeful to have a person in place by August. So good to see you all again and glad to spend some time this morning giving you an update on how the class came together after now that we're post May 1st. So with that, I'll turn it back to Roger to kind of walk us through some of the details.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, you want to hit the button? Bring up the data. There we go. All right, so as you can see, we had a very large applicant pool, a little bit more than almost 11% more than we had last year. And over the course of the last 4 years, we've almost doubled our total number of applicants. So that has been good. A lot more opportunity for students to, and a lot more students taking advantage of the opportunity to apply. We've seen a shift, and it continues in the timing of the application. What you see on the screen there, early action, almost 30, a little more than 31,000 applicants, or 70% of our applicants are applying during the early action process, with regular decision filling in with almost 13,000. And that is a complete flip over the last, I'm going to say, 5 years. Our largest population used to be our regular decision pool, and it clearly has shifted to the early action process, which causes a little bit more of a challenge a little bit down the line, but we'll talk about that when we get to the waitlisted students. We're still right around that 50-50 mark of in-state versus out-of-state students, with almost 22,000 in-state students and just a little over 22,000 out-of-state students having applied. Our demographics in terms of gender is looking to balance out. When I first got here some 30 years ago, we were 64% female, and now we're coming to a little bit more of a balance with 58% female and a little more than 40% being males. Right on the mark, 50% in state, 50% out of state. An increase in the work that we've done here to help support um, underrepresented student populations, focus on providing awareness for first generation students. And we continue to, given the current times, international applications at 795 for the fall term. Overall, for both the spring, summer, and fall, we're sitting just under 900 total applications. A number of years ago, and by that I mean a while ago, we stopped requiring the SAT score, but as you can see on the screen, about 20% of our applicants are still submitting a standardized test score, whether it be the SAT or the ACT scores. Moving on to our the admit pool. Um, from the applicant pool. There you go. All right. So out of those 44,000, we admitted just over 29,000. Early action saw the bulk of it, as you would expect, with 70% of our applicants coming from the early action pool. So 19,841 were admitted during the early action process, and we offered 1,300 to the wait list. So the way our process works is those who applied during the early action process, if they meet the criteria for admission during the early action process, they are offered an opportunity to be admitted. If not, they're deferred, where their application will be reevaluated with our regular decision applicant pool. And then we offer some of those students from the early action process admission during our regular decision process. Those who we are not able to offer admission to during the regular decision process may be offered the opportunity to be on our wait list. This year we offered 7,450 or so students or applicants an opportunity to be on our wait list, which comprises about 17% of the total applicants. And 28, kind of a unique number, of students actually accepted the waitlist offer. So we went to the waitlist relatively early in our process, and we offered admission to 1,300 students who were on the waitlist and who had accepted our waitlist. And at JMU, our process is perhaps a little bit different than it may be at other schools. If a student is offered the opportunity to be on the wait list, they actually have to accept that offer. If they do not accept that offer, we do not further consider them for admission from the wait list. So of those 7,450 that were given an opportunity to be on the wait list, only 2,800 said yes, and of those 2,800, we offered 1,300 of those an opportunity for admission. Split kind of the same, staying right there with in terms of the admit pool, 60% female. I think in the applicant pool we were at 58%. So it kind of mirrors what our applicant pool looks like. 53% of the applicants that we accepted were from out of state. The underrepresented populations comprise 34% of our admit pool. First generation were at 18%, and international applicants we admitted 313 for the fall term. I think those are the hard numbers right there. I'll pass it on to Melinda so we can get all the numbers out to you, and then we can engage in the conversation.
Thanks, Roger. So with all the kind of casting the wide net to yield the class that we want this year, it's probably important that I'll just say before I dive into this piece, the one thing I want you all to know is that JMU hopes to reach a 75% in-state enrollment and a 25% out-of-state enrollment. So you're going to see us continue to admit a little bit higher number of students out of state because it's a really hard yield, meaning it's really hard to cultivate that out-of-state population for us and to grow the class. So, but we have been true in that we are admitting roughly the same number of in-state students to ensure that we are able to accommodate as many Virginia students as possible. So that you'll see admit rates for out of state will continue to kind of go up because it's so much more competitive. We don't have scholarship dollars to attract our out of state students. So we have to offer more admits. But the exciting news that I get to share is a little bit about where the class is today, now that we're post May 1st. So we had our target enrollment size for the fall is 4,800 new students. And as of May 1, or really May 2nd, we had over 5,400 students pay a deposit and say they were coming to JMU. But in this world of higher education, this summer, there's still a lot of shifts and movement over the summer as we contend with MELT. And so far, we've already had about 160 students say, just kidding, we're not coming to JMU. And so we'll see that that number continues to melt down. And generally, what we will work with at the end of the day will probably be about 5 to 6% of our in-state students who are saying they're coming to JMU will make a different plan. And anywhere between 8 to 9% of our out-of-state students will ultimately decide not to come to JMU by our first day of classes or by move-in. And so we think that we'll probably end up with a class of around 4,900, 4,950, which is slightly higher than our enrollment goal, but still within range and at a size that we can manage. For those of you who joined me in January, when we were talking about early action decisions and admit rates, I talked a lot about how we really could not over-enroll the class. We had over-enrolled significantly the last 3 years, but we have new housing that's coming online. We've planned a little differently for some sections in general education. So 100 students will be easy for us to manage if it does turn out that we over-enroll at 4,900 as opposed to our goal of 4,800. Again, trying to strike that balance of in-state versus out-of-state so that in totality for the undergraduate population, JMU eventually will reach 75% in-state students and 25% out-of-state students. The demographics are following very close to what we saw in our applicant pool and our admit pool. We do usually balance out a little bit better with the male-female ratio. It's never 50-50, although that would, in an ideal world, that's what it would be. But I'm glad to see that right now we're currently at 55% female, 45% male. Our underrepresented minorities or students of color continues to stay strong and steady. JMU was never an institution that considered these pieces in our admissions process. And so we haven't seen huge swings or changes in our demographic makeup, even though we know that laws and rules around us continue to change, but the way that we read applications and make admissions decisions, which is based strictly on a student's academic preparation, we continue to see steady growth and of the makeup of our class. The first gen percentage is there for you at about 17%, and that is up just slightly over last year by 1 percentage point. I also thought it would be interesting for you to know that our Pell population has seen some nice growth this year, and we are over right now, just over 20% of the students who are coming to the university that are Pell eligible. And I'm going to talk about why that is in just a minute. We've made some strategic changes and received some additional scholarship to support those students. My favorite stat is that JMU students really represent a national voice, right? So we have 37 states, 32 counties, or 32 countries that make up our class so far. Obviously, that will continue to shift and change as we go through the summer months, but that's something for us to be proud of. Our applicant pool represented all 50 states. And so to see our enrollment come in with 2/3 of the country represented for the class, I think that's also something for us to be proud of. And so with that, Andrea, I'll just ask that you shift to the next slide. And so questions that we often get is a little bit about what are our students interested in? What are their top majors? What are the things that they are considering? We can continue to see, for those of you that are not as familiar with JMU, we really have built on a foundation of a strong liberal arts and sciences core curriculum or general education system here. And so one of our primary areas that students often identify JMU for is what we call here exploratory, which may also be interpreted as undecided or undeclared. And the reason we call that exploratory is because we know students really do have a choice. They're not applying to a specific major or to a specific program or college when they apply to the university. There are just a few exceptions to that rule, and those are all in our visual and performing arts areas. But otherwise, students have the freedom to make a decision once they're here. And so we have a really strong general education program that allows students to explore in a lot of different areas before choosing an academic major. And so we consistently see that as being one of our most popular majors for the university, knowing that in about a year from now, they'll settle in or they will switch from where they had originally decided they wanted to study. They will explore and find a new area, and we welcome that. And I think it's actually one of the things that JMU does exceptionally well. Otherwise, you would also see strength in an interest that continues to be in our health sciences and, of course, in STEM fields. But I'm always happy to see that business continues to be there. And if we were to expand this list a little bit more, you would see political science on there. You would see English if we had room to kind of give you a few more majors of interest. You would see a few other areas, not always in the sciences or STEM and health related or business, but we do continue to see those traditional majors that our students will identify with. And so we joined the Common Application 4 years ago. That's partly responsible for much of the growth in our applicant pool. And today, 99% of the students who are applying to JMU prefer to use the Common App. And we welcome that for our students. We do retain our own institutional application just in case. I've been in this world long enough to remember when the Common App didn't work. So we'll keep our institutional app there as sort of a little bit of an insurance and safety net for us, but it makes no difference how a student applies or which application they choose to submit for consideration to us. But we always like to share the demographics with you of what application platform students are choosing. But again, we have no preference. In terms of the scholarship piece, I wanted to share a little bit about that outcome. Actually, the percentage here is just slightly higher. 7% of admitted students received a scholarship this year. That's up a little bit, and that's because there were some new dollars that was funneled into support in-state students who are Pell eligible. The university reallocated $1.8 million of institutional funding to support Pell students with a $6,000 scholarship. That translates to 75 new students annually. And then over the course of four years, we will have served 300 new students. And so with that money that will now be a permanent part of our financial aid strategy, we're able to reach more Pell students who are here in Virginia with a $6,000 scholarship, really lowering their cost of attendance to just right around the difference or the gap between our COA or our cost of attendance and their financial aid award. The difference would be about $5,000 before it was just over $10,000. So we've made huge strides to try to reach and support more Pell students. And that also is one of the reasons we've seen a higher percentage of students this year say yes to JMU, because there's been more dollars allocated to support our low income students. And so with that, I think I wanted just to talk about two other things before we move on and start the next part of our presentation, or really the open Q&A. I want to make sure that we talk about coming to see us. So we loved having you all come to our campus and spend some time with us. Send your students to come see us. Really easy to access right off of Interstate 81. Summer is a great time to visit JMU's campus, and we try to offer a variety of times so that you can come and spend a little bit of time and see the Valley for yourself. If you haven't been here, we would love to host you. I said at the very beginning, we are in the final stages. We are in the final stages of interviews for a new director of admissions. And so we hope to have that person in place by August 1, which is really exciting. I know that Roger and I have held it together, but we're ready to have someone to be truly standing in leading the admissions team. And so we're excited, and we will certainly notify you as soon as that decision has been made. And we know who the leader will be, who our new director of admissions here at JMU will be. We'll make sure that you all are notified. A new program that we launched this year is actually just most recently, you may have heard some students talk about that. We've created an opportunity for some students who were admitted to JMU or placed on the wait list and continue to show great interest in the university to join us for the fall semester in London JMU has many study abroad programs, long-standing study abroad programs, one of which is the London program. And so we've redesigned that program to accommodate first-year students to offer 5 general education courses. And so we're having an interest meeting for students this week who, again, might be on the wait list or were admitted to the university and are still thinking about JMU. And they have the opportunity to spend their fall semester in London in a program that is JMU led and based, and then seamless transition into our university here in Harrisonburg for spring semester. And so I just wanted to make you all aware that that's out there in case you hear about that and you have students that are asking questions. And with that, I think I will turn it over and we will be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have about our class.
All right, yeah. So if anyone has questions about JMU, about our numbers, anything like that, please use the Q&A chat function or the actual chat box. You can use that as well, and we will field those questions as they come to both Melinda and or Roger. We'll give you all a couple seconds, couple minutes to do that as well. Melinda, if you want to clarify for everyone that 6% of students receive merit aid.
Sure, I can clarify that a little bit. So 6% of students received a scholarship offer, merit scholarship offer. That is accurate. But we had additional dollars that were new to the university this year, which is why I said is actually closer to 7%, because we've never had this before. It did go to students who were Pell students or low income students. And so that was a new strategy outside of Centennial. Those of you who know JMU really well, you probably are familiar with our Centennial Scholars Program. That is our only low income Pell program, first generation program, but it's for 50 students. And we had this year had over 900 students apply for Centennial. So the acceptance rate there for Centennial is so small. And so to be given additional scholarship dollars to specifically award non-criteria based, I mean, they had to be admitted to the university, they had to be in-state students. They also had to be students who were academically eligible to be successful. Well, that's anyone who's admitted to the university. So to be able to offer additional scholarships to Pell students for JMU is huge and is new for us.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. And then to kind of piggyback off of that, can you just a little bit talk about and clarify that scholarships, are they only offered to in-state students?
The vast majority of the scholarships that JMU has are for in-state students. We do have some scholarships that we will award to out-of-state students, but those are very far and few between. And so I can think maybe of the scholarship dollars that we have to award. We do about 50, maybe 50-50 in terms of in-state versus out-of-state. So it's just such a small population of students of scholarship dollars that we have available at the university. So if we were to look at 6% out of 2,900 offers of admission, that's roughly what, 2,000-ish students. I can't do that math that quickly in my head, but it's a fairly small amount. And so about 1,000 or less go out of state and about 1,000 or so come in state. So we try to be equitable with the few dollars that we have available, but it is not a lot.
Awesome, thank you. And just, this was answered in chat, but I want to just say it out into the webinar so everyone can see it if no one has it open. But the question was, did we say that 17% of the applicants were placed on the wait list? And then Roger answered in the chat that we offered 7,458 spots on the wait list, or 17% of applicants, and 2,828 accepted the waitlist offer. Just to put that back out there. Um, let's see. Could you talk a little bit about if JMU considers demonstrated interest? This is always a great question to ask.
Sure. Well, actually, do you or Adam want to talk about that? You're the ones reading applications because I see one of the questions is also based on strictly merit or academic consideration. Do you want to talk about that, or I'm happy to answer?
Sure, we could talk about that.
Sure.
Definitely. Um, so at JMU, we definitely will accept letters of continued interest or demonstrate interest, but we do not take it into consideration in terms of when we make decisions for the student applicant. Obviously, we will also take note of the fact that they are JMU #1 or have a strong interest in JMU, but in terms of that impacting their decision, we are making a decision outside of that knowledge specifically. And then to kind of tie that into whether we base our decisions based off of strictly academic performance. Yeah, so essentially what we look for at JMU when we're evaluating students' application is we're going to look at what's mainly on that transcript. So we want to see if the high school offers academic rigor, so classes like AP, IB, ACE, honors, dual enrollment classes, that the students are taking advantage of those opportunities presented to them. And then we also want to we want to see 3 to 4 years in all core academic areas, including English, math, lab science, social science, and foreign language. More specifically, we want to see a year beyond Algebra 2, where Algebra 2 is the prerequisite course. That is a huge thing that we're looking for because once they get to JMU and they have to take a math course, the expectation of the professors and the course curriculum is that they have a foundation of knowledge beyond the Algebra 2 curriculum. So we want to just make sure that we're preparing them and they're already prepared for succeeding at JMU. But yeah, so essentially, so we're looking at those things, and then final grades is the last component that we're really looking at. And we want to see mostly A's and B's specifically within those core academic areas. We will take note of things like a letter of recommendation, or personal statement or list of activities, but they're not really going to have a huge impact on the grades. And then talking about earlier, I know Roger said we had 19% of our students submit SAT scores and ACT scores. You know, being test optional, we're not going to look at the test scores as a way of determining a decision for a student either. So it really is on that academic transcript and how they're doing in their classes. So if you have any more questions on that, I hope that answers your question. But that's the general overview is, yeah, we are mostly looking at the academics of the student.
Thanks, Andrew, for answering that question. I'll just add that we also have our webinar from January breaks down what we look at. So if you wanted to go back and kind of hear, you know, almost line by line of the information we're taking into consideration, that's a great resource for you as well.
Yes. Thank you for plugging that again, Melinda. This question is going back to the London semester with our study abroad. So could you just clarify how many first-year students are anticipating on going to that program?
Sure. We hope to have about 20 students participate in our London, 10 to 20 students participate in our London program in the fall.
Awesome. And then this question's about the first slide here that says there was a percent increase of the 11% shown, but then below that there was an indication of 19% increase, which they think is a different increase, but wasn't clear on what the increase was. So the increase that was 11% or roughly 11% is in our total applications from last year to this year. The 19% increase was how many applications increase we had from out-of-state applicants between the 2 years. So those are the different percentages there. So 11% for overall applications and 20% for our out-of-state population. And then another person asked if the vast majority of out-of-state students pay full price. Typically, yeah. Like Melinda was saying, we do have very limited scholarships that go out to our out-of-state students. So that ticket price that you see on our website or anywhere when it's published is usually what our out-of-state students pay. Any money or the majority of the money that comes from that comes to our students that are out of state usually come from external providers and external scholarships that they receive, which we always emphasize for students to look and consider applying for, because those are great ways to find small amounts of money or larger amounts of monies that they might want, as out of state students do pay the full ticket price.
Can I add a comment there as well? So one of the things I think is important to note about the out-of-state component here is that JMU does try to keep the overall tuition at a competitive price point. And so often what we find is that for our out-of-state students, even with the out-of-state, even with scholarship offers, sometimes JMU at the bottom line, even without a scholarship, is equal to or slightly lower in terms of the cost for families. But we recognize that families want to say they've received a scholarship, but it's just challenging as a public institution to be able to grow our endowment in a way that can support out-of-state recruitment. And so we do have to cast a wider net to offer more students admission out of state, knowing that we really cannot compete sometimes with scholarship opportunities. But we try very hard to keep our out-of-state cost as low as possible. And we do think that gives us a competitive advantage as well.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for that additional note, Melinda. The next question is about the Honors College. Do you have the number of students that were offered a spot in the Honors College?
I do. Or do you have that? Or would you like for me to cover?
I don't have that number.
Yeah. Sure. This year we had about 3,000 applications, 3,000 students apply for the Honors College. That was up 11% over last year. So again, that program continues, or that college continues to see interest and growth. They admitted about 55%, just over half of the students who applied, and that also is more competitive. It was down slightly, 59% last year, the admit rate, so 55% this year. Was that. And then we're looking for a cohort size of 330 new students in our Honors College. And I have to say thank you to Chris Gothard, who's on this call and gave me that data behind the scenes. So thank you, Chris.
Awesome. And then we have a question in here that I'm going to hopefully pull up the slide again. The question is, how many applicants were admitted? Which we had a total admit rate of, or a total admit of 29,259 admits to the university out of the 44, just over 44,000 applicants that we had.
And I like numbers. Sorry, Andrew, I'll just
go ahead, please.
About a 66% admit rate, and that was down 3 percentage points over last year. So our admit rate was 69%, and we slid just slightly down to 66%. So again, as our applicant pool continues to grow, which is not normal, right? Normally with the Common App, we should have leveled off by now, but this is year 4, and we're still continuing to grow. So some of that, until we sort of level in at where our application numbers rest or come to a rest, our admit rate is still a tricky bit.
Yeah. Going back to that Honors College question about the admits, but in a different way, could you share what the honors profile was? Do you have any knowledge on what they looked for? Or would that be more something to direct to them specifically?
I can share that the profile of the Honors College student is generally very competitive. I mean, we're talking about the students that are in the top 10 to 15% of their high school pools. But the Honors College does require essays as a part of their application process, and they are looking at the way in which students are responding to those essay questions that are asked, and they're using that information to make a determination. So academically, these are the best and the brightest in our class. But we're also looking for students who are interested in a little bit that are the way in which they talk about their interest and apply that, the way that they're going to apply that to their honors college learning, which is the way that the essay questions are set up, that really will be how they make their decision. So students who are thoughtful and take time to respond about the questions in a way that we think demonstrates learning or interest and growth, I think those are the students ultimately at the end of the day who will receive that offer. With the cohort being so small of 330 students, they can't say yes to everyone. And so the essay questions and the way that students are thoughtful about responding really does separate their class. And that's reviewed by multiple folks who are reading honors applications, not just one individual. And so a committee is making that selection. So academically, that would be, academically, we're the most competitive students in the class. So, perfect. I hate to say the word perfect 4.0, but that's what comes to mind when I think about those students who have really strong academic curriculums, a really strong academic curriculum, but they are the students who are going to take some time and be thoughtful in the way that they respond to the honors essay questions.
Awesome, thank you. And Melinda, do students who apply or get admitted into the honors college tend to share their test scores more often?
No, they don't. So I think that is probably an important piece to highlight here. We're talking about 19% of the population who applied to JMU that submitted test scores. And if we were to break out the honors college data, they would follow it would look very similar. We do not utilize test scores to make any of our admission decisions or decisions for the honors college or for scholarship decisions. So it really is not a part of of the information that we consider.
Yeah, I just wanted to really plug that in there, especially because, like you said, it has no weight in our decision making. The last question about the honors college here is: do they being honors college have an LLC scholarship or early registration?
I don't have the answers to that. I can quickly look it up though. 2 seconds.
Jump in, Melinda.
Oh, the honors college, yes. Oh, there's Chris Gothard, our honors college expert.
Yes, so to answer the question about the perks of the Honors College, they do have a residential learning community that students can opt into. It's in Shenandoah Hall over on the east side of our campus. I would say most honors students make that decision, but it is not a requirement of participating in that program. There are certain scholarships that are only available to Honors College students, but I do want to stress that being a part of the Honors College does not guarantee a scholarship. So they have access to some specialized scholarship dollars and some things that are restricted to only those students, but all students in the Honors College are not on scholarship. And then the last one, early registration, the answer to that is yes. They do get priority registration, and that carries with them for their time in the program. So that's a big perk, particularly at a school of our size. A lot of students like to take advantage of that.
Chris, is there anything you'd like to add about the competitive nature of the honors college to supplement what I said?
I think you covered it well. Just to reemphasize, it's kind of a self-selection process. If students are thinking about the honors college, then they tend to be the top of their class. And so on the academic profile side, they all look very similar. And that's why the decision really comes down to that essay response. The honors college is really focused on building a community. And so if students can share in their essay responses or their short answer responses, how they would contribute to that community, what perspectives, experiences, critical thinking skills they have that would add value to the community, then they are positioning themselves well for admission into the honors college.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris, for being our resident honors expert here. We greatly appreciate your input for that. Going back to our questions, this is again about the SAT, ACT test score submissions. So if we are not using them for making a decision, if a student does submit their test scores, what are they being used for?
assuming I'm answering that question, which I'm happy to. So we do provide in the admissions process, we can see them on our screens, on the reading screen, they're there. But so few students actually have scores that when we're looking to make a decision, they're non-evaluative. Because if we're looking at, let's just take a high school, for example. If we have 200 applications from the same high school, which is a real scenario, maybe 10 students at that school have an SAT or an ACT. That information is not useful. How in the world can you use that to make any different determination about a student's readiness if only 5 to 10 students in an applicant pool of 200 from the same high school have that information? So while we can see it, we don't use it. Where we do use it is reporting out. I am often asked to talk about the the academic profile of the students who are admitted and enrolled at the university. We have to do this for official reporting like IPEDS reporting and information that goes to SHEV. And so we use what we have, but we don't collect and we don't require students to submit that information, but we try to provide external reporting that we need to give to some agencies information about our class. And then we also do provide that information on our website and in our publications, but we qualify it by saying 19%, or this year it will be 19% of students submitted a test score. So the vast majority of students, we do not have this information. And we don't use it. We don't require that they submit it, but a lot of students want to know that they can give it to us. They want to know that we have that information should we want to use it or look at it. And so instead of saying, no, don't send it to us, because that often leads to more questions, we just say, you can send it, we will have it, but it is not utilized as an evaluative part of our process. And we have seen that number decline. I think when I came in 2021 or I think it was 2021, maybe we were at 50% or 40% of students submitting a test score. JMU has been test optional since 2018. And in those early years, 80 to 90% of the students still submitted a test score. As we move through COVID and post-COVID, we have seen that percentage decline. So we went from 80 to 90% of applicants still submitting it, even though it was optional, down to last year, I think we were at 22%. This year was 19% of our applicant pool. So that kind of gives you a perspective on where we are. And it does, and at this time, we don't see any need to have that as a piece of our review process and a decision-making factor. But a lot of students still ask if they can submit it. It's important to them. And so we keep that avenue open for them to do so.
And the only, I'll just add on to what Melinda has shared, that the only other standardized test scores that we do require are going to be the English language proficiency scores for international students or students for whom English is not their native speaking language, or they come from a school where English is not the native language of the country. So our international student population will submit standardized test scores.
Awesome. Thank you both for that information about the test scores. And Roger, thank you for the inclusion about the English language proficiency test scores as well. At the moment, that's the last question that I have in here. I will leave the chat open for another couple seconds, just in case there are any last lingering questions. Please put them in.
Just pop one question out there that I've been receiving from a lot of my counselors that perhaps is on the mind of folks here. I know that we have met our class, but we still have students active on the wait list. And so can we share a little bit about what that process looks like to close that out and notify all of those students?
Sure. So I'm happy to answer that question. We still have active on our wait list, as Roger, I think, shared with you early on. We did make some offers to our wait list pretty early on. About 1,300 students were admitted off of our active wait list, which leaves us about 1,400, 1,500, about 1,500 that are still active on our wait list, or at least active that we know of. And so what we've done is we have created opportunities for some of those students to maybe consider our London program for the fall. But in terms of activating the wait list for on-campus additional offers of admission for the fall semester, we will not be making additional offers. So we still have room to melt, which we will do over the summer, but to make more offers of admission from the wait list would certainly ensure over enrollment and space exceeding space capacity. But we know that there's so many students that are still interested in JMU, which is why I thoughtfully worked with our Center for Global Engagement and our study abroad to see if there were alternative pathways that we could create for students. And there are a couple of them. So we've opened up the London program for our waitlisted students that may want to still keep JMU in their that has JMU high on their list, and they can pathway to us for spring semester. We've actually stood up, I don't know if we have anyone on this call from the local community, but here in the Shenandoah Valley, only just for the Valley, we've created a partnership with Blue Ridge Community College called Blue Ridge, or BR to JMU. It's a direct admission program for our local students. And so that's another pathway that we've stood up and created. So if you have local students that are on our wait list that want to create a pathway to JMU, that's another option that they would have for us. And that is an application process that students have to go through. But in terms of closing out the waitlist for fall, we will work with our Center for Global Engagement to see if we can get a population of students that want to participate in the London program. Once that is set for us, again, about 15 to 20 students would be our ideal size, then we will ultimately close the waitlist and release everyone from that. And so we just have a little bit more work to do before we are ready to close the waitlist. But again, to make this answer very long and complicated, no more admissions for the fall class on campus from our wait list.
Awesome. Thank you for that additional information there, Melinda. That was the last question I saw in the chat, unless there's someone that has a last minute question. So I'm just going to wrap up here. First, I do want to thank Melinda and Roger today for coming on here and presenting this valuable information for us and giving us all this information. I hope you all enjoyed getting this information and understanding a little bit more about JMU, our admission process, our admit pool, and all that. Also, Chris Gothard, thank you for chiming in about the Honors College. We greatly appreciate your valuable experiences and expertise in that as well. And then thank you all. Again, this is our last webinar for the academic year. So we thank you for all of your support and help throughout the year and making this program as good as it is. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and we'll be in touch in a couple months, if not over the summer, with the start of the new academic year. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the Counselor Education Program, and we'd be happy to connect with you all. Have a great rest of your day, y'all. Bye.